Okay, in day one of our SQL module, we're going to build a database in Access. So let's scroll through the Canvas page until we get to SQL, the SQL module. Let's look at this May term survey doc real quick. We actually use this survey form to build a database to do some analysis around interest in May terms at Westminster College. Students were given this form and they were asked to fill it out. So a student filling this out would circle one of these four options. They'd circle one of these four options. They would circle whether yes or no they were attended a past May term trip, and yes or no whether they are currently registered for a May term trip, and then their interest in doing a May term trip. Now all of these, each one of these fields, you can think of this as a field, this is a field, this is a field, this is a field, right? Each one of these fields has one possible outcome. When we get down to areas of interest, students could circle all of them, or just one, or they could circle two, right? They could circle any number of these down here. They also could list multiple countries, right? So one student might list one country and one area. Another student might list all areas and in 10 countries, right? So that makes this problem a little difficult. And then down here, they pick one of these, circle one of these, which is not a problem. But down here, they can check all of these, and then they could also write in a desired experience. And then they could also write in any other important components, right? All right, so that's the form. And because of the multiple responses here, here, and here, we want to use Access to for building this database, not Excel. Okay, Access is pretty slick in handling these kinds of jobs. So let's go back and get our data. The data is in an Excel file called maytermsurvey.xlsx. I'm going to download it. Okay, click that download, and then I'll find it in my download folder. Let's see. Yeah, let me skinny this up a little bit here. There it is right there. So I'm going to open it up. And if you go to the survey table, you can see that the data has been filled in, right? You can see that the data has been filled in. So the first person to turn in a survey was a sophomore. That person was undecided. That person hasn't been on a May term, is not currently registered for a May term, has an interest of 5 in going on a May term, is only willing to spend up to $2,000 for the May term trip, and then wrote this by hand on the piece of paper, right? Now this is person 1. So if we go to the areas table, these are the area, we got these values from the survey sheet, right? These are the things that people could circle. The list of countries we got off the web, off a website, right? The experiences, these are from the survey form, right? And then link area, if you remember that very first person in our survey, that person's name might be John Smith. That person said they want to go to area 2, which is Europe. They want to go to area 3, which we've coded as Asia. They want to go to area 4, which we've coded as Central South America. They indicated they want to go to area 5, which we've coded as Oceania. They also indicated they want to go to area 6, which is Africa, and we coded as Africa. And then they also picked other. The only area they're not willing to go to is, America, right? Because they're from America, right? The United States. If you look at link countries, that very first person picked a lot of countries, right? Country 9 is coded as Australia, so they want to go to Australia. That person also indicated they wanted to go to country 24, which in our list is coded as Brazil, right? And then we got link experience. This person wanted link experience 1, 2, 4, and 5, right? So let's go to the experience table. The person wanted 1, 2, 4, and 5, right? So they wanted an experience that was related to their major, one with a service learning emphasis, one focused on experience in particular educational sites, one focused on experience in business and other professional organizations, right? So you can see this is kind of difficult to model in Excel. That's why we're going to use Access. So let me save this in a folder. I'm going to save it. It's currently in the download folder, right? It's currently in the download folder. So I'm going to save it in my documents. If I'm using Access on Westminster Anywhere, you'd want to save it in the H drive. So if I'm doing this in Westminster Anywhere, then I would go to consider this the H drive, right? Your H drive, your Westminster cloud storage, right? So then I open up my documents or my H drive, my documents on my laptop, my H drive on Westminster Anywhere, and out here in this white area, or this blank area out here, out here in this blank area, I'm going to click on New. I'm going to click on New. Whoops. So you can see it. Let me get this over here. I'm going to click on New and then Folder. I'm going to name this folder SQL Tutorial. Okay? Because Access is an SQL system, right? So now I got to find it, SQL Tutorial. Okay, and then I'll save it here as maytermsurvey.xlsx, right? Okay, so okay, that's weird. The data is saved, right? The data is saved. All right, let me open up Access now. So I'm going to type it in the Windows search. And I'm going to click on blank database. I'm going to find that folder I just created, right? SQL tutorial. And I'm going to save it in there as SQL tutorial. Right? I'm going to hit OK. And then I click create. And now I have a blank database, right? Let me just verify that the Excel file and that blank database are in fact in that folder. The folder is in the documents folder, right? So SQL tutorial. I'll open up the folder SQL tutorial. Sure enough, my blank database is in there and my raw data is in there, right? So I'm going to close that out. I just verified that that was the case. Now we're going to import data. We're going to import that data from the Excel spreadsheet into Access. So we're going to click on the External Data tab. We're going to click on the New Data Source button. We're going to click on From File. And then we're going to click Excel because it's stored in Excel, right? So we're going to click on Excel. Now I need to browse. To that folder I created, right? So it's in the Documents folder. And then the SQL tutorial folder within Documents. And then we're going to click on maytermsurvey.xlsx. Now we're looking for an Excel file, so you're not going to see anything else, right? We're looking for Excel files. So we're going to double click on that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this and copy this path. I'm going to copy the path. Okay, and you'll find out in a second why I do that. Then you just hit OK. So we want to import the first table, which is survey. This is a worksheet in that Excel file. So I'm going to click on survey. Then I'm going to click next. I want to make sure that the box here is check marked for first row contains column headings, because that's the case, right? The first row contains column headings, right? So we want to make sure that's check marked. Then hit next. We're not going to worry about these kind of details. We're just building a basic database together. These kind of details we'll talk about in a class that does advanced access. And we're going to choose my own primary key, right? And any field name that ends in ID, like survey ID, is going to be a primary key in this particular example. Okay, so choose my own primary key. It'll first highlight the first column. Now, if your primary key is in a different column, you can just go, but that's not the case here, so we're going to go with the default, right? Survey ID. And then we'll hit finish and then close. Now we got this survey table here, right? So we'll just open it up and look at it. It looks like it did in Excel, right? Looks just like it did in Excel. Okay, so we're going to close that out. We're also going to close out this blank table. It gets deleted. Now we got to get the other Excel worksheets, right? So we're going to click external data again, new data source from file Excel. And I'm going to copy my path, right? Hit OK. Now I want to get the areas table, right? Areas is a small table here. This is where we coded domestic is 1, Europe is 2, Asia is 3, etc., 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 right? So we click next. Make sure that's check marked, right? Next. Next. And we're going to choose my own primary key. Any field name that ends in ID in this example is a primary key. Then next and finish. Okay, close. And we just continue to do that, right? So external data, new data source from file, Excel, paste in my path, makes it easier. I'm using Control V to paste it, right? I'm using the hotkey. Now we want the countries table, right? Where Afghanistan is coded as 1, Albania 2, Algeria 3, right? And the United States is way down at the bottom of the list, right? Okay, we're not able to scroll through it for some reason. All right, so we hit next. Make sure that check marks checked for first row contains column headings. Next, next. Choose my own primary key. Any field that ends in ID is a primary key, so we're going to choose my own primary key, and we're going to pick country ID to be our primary key in this one. Then we click finish and then close. And again, we just keep doing this. Now, Power BI Desktop, you can import them all at the same time. I wish that was the case with Access. Paste in my path to my Excel file. Now we have areas, we have survey, we have countries. Now we need experience, right? So next, that's check marked. Next, next. Choose my own primary key. Any field name that ends in ID in this example is a primary key. Click finish. Close. Okay, we only have 3 more tables to get. New data source from file, Excel, paste the path, click OK. Now we're getting link area, right? This is the table that connects the survey table to the areas table, right? So at the Washington State Welfare Office, they would call this a crosswalk, right? So we'll go next. First row contains column headings. Next. Now here we have 2 IDs, right? So we have 2 primary keys. So what we're going to do is we're going to click next, but we're not going to set the primary key. Because in this import step, we can't identify both as primary keys. We're just going to click no primary key on these tables and then finish. Because these are tables that connect 2 tables, right? And then close. All right, so new data source, from file, Excel, Control V hotkey to paste in my path. We have link area, now we need link country. Click next. That's check marked. That's fine. Again, we're going to choose no primary key because we have two primary keys, both these and an ID. This is the crosswalk, or the table that connects the survey IDs. And you can remember, this is like that guy named John Smith, right? And he is interested in a lot of different countries, right? And these are the numerical codes for various countries. We hit finish and close. We only have one more to get. From file, Excel, Control V to paste in my path. And then we got to get the last table, which is link experience, right? And then next, first row, column headings, next. No primary key begins. Again, we have two primary keys, both these end in ID, and finish and close. Okay, now we're going to connect the tables together. Oh, before we do that, well, let's go ahead and do that. We're going to connect the tables together. So let's click on Database Tools and then click on Relationships. Okay, so I'm going to pull a survey out. Survey is the main table, right? This is the main table. I'm going to put it over here. Okay, so then I'm going to pull out areas. I'm going to put it right here. And I'm going to shrink that up so you can see it and fit it in there. Okay, so how is the areas table connected to the survey table? Well, this is the numerical code for each area, right? This is the numerical code that corresponds to each respondent of our survey. So we cannot connect these two. So there's something in between. The thing that's in between is the link area. You can think of this as the crosswalk, right? You can think of this as kind of like a crosswalk. So these two have to be primary keys, right? Because they both end in ID, right? So this table connects to the areas table via survey ID and area ID. See that? And then we got the countries. We'll put the countries over here. Right? And then the survey table is connected to the countries table with the link country table, right? The link country table. But we have to define these as primary keys. And then the experience table I'm going to put countries over here. We'll put the geography over here, right, on the left. Put the geography over on the left. And then the experience table is connected to the survey table via the link experience table, right? There we go. But we got to define the primary keys for the link tables. The primary keys have been defined for these main tables, right? So the way we're going to define the primary keys for the link tables is we're going to right click on each one and we're going to go to Design View. And we're going to do that for each one. Whoops. Let me redo that so you can see it. So on link area, we're going to click on Design View. Link country, we're going to click on Design View. And then link experience, we're going to click on Design View. Right? I'll move that back up. Let me make this big enough so there's no... There we go. Whoop, that's too big. There we go. All right. So the way in link experience, the way you make both these a primary key, click that box to turn it darker gray. Hold down your control button on your keyboard. If you have a Mac, you want to hold down maybe the command button, command or control. And then left click your mouse. So you highlight both rows, right? And then you can come up here to primary key and just click on that. And and that puts a key icon in each one of these gray boxes. Then you can close link experience out, right, and save it. So we're going to turn this box darker gray. We're going to hold down the control button or command button if you have a Mac. And then we're going to click this little light gray box next to country ID to highlight both rows, and then click on primary key. And then save. And then link area, we're going to click on the yellow box, hold down the control button, click on that light gray box, turn it darker gray, and then click primary key. And then close, which will ask us to save, right? Now, we want to connect area ID to area ID. And we're going to go ahead and check mark these two boxes and make sure these two things are the same, right? We got area ID in the areas table, and we got area ID in the link area table, right? And we create. And notice it draws a line from area ID down to area ID, and there's a 1 to infinity here, right? And what 1 to infinity means is there is one item in the areas table called domestic, right? But there might be everybody in the survey might have picked domestic as an area they want to go to, which means many, right? So 1 to many. It could also mean 1 to 0, right? Nobody could have picked domestic because everybody's from the United States, right? Everybody's in the United States getting a domestic experience, right? So it could be 1 to many, right? 1 to many. All right, so let's move on. We're going to connect country to link country via country ID. So we're going to click and then create, make sure those two are the same. So we have countries table, country ID, link country table, country ID. These are the field names and these are the tables, right? We click create. Okay. And then we're going to connect survey to areas by dragging survey, click on survey ID. You'll left click, hold down the left click button, and then you drag and drop it onto the survey ID field in the link area table by releasing the left click button, right? And then you click those two boxes. Survey ID is from the survey table. Survey ID is from the link area table, and you hit create, right? So now the main table is connected to link area, which is connected to the areas table, right? And what this does is it makes the survey table wider. And if every person that responded only picked one area, then the survey table doesn't get any taller. But if everybody but one person picked one area to go to and the other person picked 5, what would happen is survey gets 4 rows longer. So connecting these tables together makes the survey table wider and it can make it longer, right? So it'll create duplicates of the rows within this table, right? Okay, now we're going to connect the survey table to countries by dragging survey ID to survey ID, right? And we check mark those two things, hit create, right? Cool. And then we're going to connect experience table to the link experience table by holding on the left click button and dropping it onto experience ID by releasing the left click button. And then we check mark those two boxes and we hit create, right? So experience ID is connected to experience ID. And then we click and drag survey ID onto survey ID, check mark, and then create. Now this step, when you're using an SQL platform like MySQL or SQLite or something else, this step is done on a piece of paper, right? You draw this diagram on a piece of paper. You don't actually do this step, right? That's kind of unique about Access, is this is not really done in SQL, right? And I'll explain why a little later. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to save. right? And then we're going to create some queries. We're going to create 5 queries. And the first query we're going to create, is a crosstab. Your boss wants to know how many people in a major, how many people in a major, what the frequencies are, what the frequency distribution is for highest cost are willing to pay, to get a kind of an idea of like a maximum, right? So this is what this diagram is for, right? We want a crosstab or a pivot table on highest cost versus major school, right? So when you build a crosstab, you need 2 things you're going to group by. We're going to group by major school and highest cost. We need a third thing to do the counting, right? So the third thing we choose is survey ID. You can think of survey ID as a synonym for the names of our respondents in our survey. So we need 3 things. We need survey ID, major school, and highest cost. Now, when your access query involves one table, you can do the, you can click on create, and then you can use the query wizard. When you have one table, when everything comes from the same table, you can use the query wizard, right? So we click on the query wizard, and then we're going to click on crosstab query wizard, and then click OK. So it kind of looks like a crosstab here, right? You got the header columns, and you got the row headers, right? Column headers and row headers. So what we're going to do is we're going to put, if I get my diagram here, right? So highest cost, major school. We're going to put major school in the rows. And major school, highest cost are in the survey table. So we want to click on the table, the survey table, right? And then click next. All right. So I'm going to put major school in the row headers, right? I'm going to put major school in the row headers. So I'm going to click that. I can double click it or click it once and then click an arrow, right? So that populates these row headers, right? Then I want to hit next. And now I want to populate the column headers, right? And the column headers are going to be highest cost that respondents are willing to pay to go on a May-term trip. So I'm going to click on highest cost, right? And then I'm going to click next. And I want the frequencies, right? I want the number of people who are willing to pay this cost and are in this school, right? So I'm going to click on count. And I'm going to hit next and finish. Okay. Now it's kind of wide, right? So what you can do here is you can click on this little box here, this gray box, turn it light gray, highlight the entire table, and then on this dark gray bar here, from the light gray box through the dark gray bar, turn your cursor into a black plus with arrows pointing in each direction. And then double click. And that will automatically size the column headers, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to save this. We're going to save this we're going to rename it query 1. Rename. We're going to rename this query 1. Okay. And then we're going to double click on it again. Okay, cool, awesome. Now this is, right, this name here is a little long. So I'm going to go back to the design view. And I'm going to change it to just total right here. So this is the name of it, right? This is the name of that, let me pull this up here. So that's the name. So if I change this to total, right? And then I run it again, it'll skinny up that column. See that? And then we can double click right there. And now it's even more compact, right? So we're going to copy this. We're going to copy this query to Word. This is what you're going to submit. What happened to my... Okay, there it goes. All right, so here we go. I got a pretty big monitor, so it's like 1.5 by 3 feet wide monitor. So I'm going to just, I'll just do this. I'll just do Control V to paste it, right? There's query 1, right? Looks pretty cool. The next thing we want to do is we want to get the SQL code that produced this query, right? So let's go back to Access. There's a code that Access used to build this query. So let's do this. We can either right click on query 1 here and do SQL view, or we can go over here and click SQL view. So it's your choice. What I'll do is I'll just do it right here, SQL view. Now, Access doesn't make the SQL code look very pretty, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. But these all caps words are like SQL functions. They're reserved words. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretty up the code. To pretty up the code, I'm going to hit enter after the all caps reserved word for a function, right? So transform is a function. I hit enter, and then I'm going to put some spaces in here. Okay. And then I'm going to come back up to transform, and I'm going to copy. I'm going to highlight all this. I'm going to hit Control C. And then this right here is an object that is going to be renamed that, right? So the next all cap reserved word is select. So I'm going to come up to the word survey, and I'm going to hit Control V, right? And this is an object, right? This is an object, an Access or SQL object. And there's a comma right here. That's a comma, right? So this is another object, and we're renaming it at total. We're renaming that total. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here, and right in front of count, I'm going to do Control V to put my objects on the right side and my functions on the left, right? My access functions on the left. Okay. And then I'll do the same thing with from. Survey is the table, right? Survey is the table. So we're getting these objects from the survey table. And then after group by, I'm gonna hit Control V. And then after pivot, I'm gonna hit Control V. All right, y'all got that? All right, now survey ID is a column in the table survey. Major school is a column in the table survey. Survey ID, again, is a column in survey. Survey is the table. Major school, a column in survey. Highest cost, a column in survey. When everything is coming from the same table, when all these fields are coming from a single table, we don't need the survey dot. We don't need the table prefix. So I'm gonna get rid of survey dot. Everywhere I see survey dot, I'm gonna get rid of. And this will help us understand what SQL code does, right? It becomes really intuitive when we do that. So anywhere where you see survey dot, just get rid of it. Be really careful when you're deleting. Only delete the survey dot. Survey followed by a dot. Okay. All right. So I'm also going to space out to here. Okay. So we're transforming count survey ID as count of survey ID. We're renaming this, right? This new object, we're renaming it that. So this is a new object. These are the counts, right? And we're grouping by two things, major school and highest cost, right? We're grouping by two things, major school and highest cost. And then we're going to do a bunch of counts, right? And our first column under the select command, our first column is going to be major school, right? And then major school is going to be filled with these counts, right? And everything's coming from the survey table. We're going to group by major school. So these are going to be the rows. These are going to be the rows of the crosstab. And these are going to be the columns of the crosstab. Okay. So let's go ahead and run it. And it looks just like what we had before, right? This here is, these weren't filled in by survey respondents, right? These are missing values. So we had 12 respondents not fill in this part of the survey, right? Okay, so the highest frequency for business majors, the highest frequency is the 12 students who are willing to pay up to $3,500. There are 11 business major students that are willing to pay up to $4,000, right? For arts and sciences, the max is in this 5,000 column. So there's 8 arts and sciences majors who are willing to pay up to $5,000, right? Nursing's maximum is in column 2,000. So 10 nursing students are willing to pay up to $2,000, right? Education's maximum value is in the 1,500 column, right? Why the maximum so small? Well, does an international trip really do much for job prospects for an education or a nursing major? Probably not. But in terms of arts and sciences, I mean, if you want to do an archaeological dig, maybe you have to go to Egypt, right? So there's going to be some arts and sciences majors that are really interested in going overseas. Business majors who are interested in international business are going to be probably interested in an overseas trip too, right? That's why arts and sciences majors, there's a lot of them out here, and that's why there's a lot of them down here for education and nursing. Okay, so that's our first query. So let's go back to our query code, our SQL code. What you're going to do is you're going to copy this cleaned up SQL code, right? You're going to copy it and you're going to paste it in your Word document. You're going to paste it under the corresponding query. Whoops. There we go. Let's see. I wanted to keep the format, but can't. So let's change it to a different format here. A different font. Courier is a good one. Courier looks like computer code. Courier, there we are. Okay, yeah, it looks like computer code. Okay, so there's the SQL code below query 1. Right? Now we're going to do another query, but we're going to do another pivot table. And this pivot table uses information from different tables. So we won't be able to use our query wizard. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find out the frequencies of people where we're grouping by major school and type of experience, right? So we have 3 tables here, right? So there's one way we could do this. We could create a long table that's not a pivot table that gives us the same exact information, but it just presents it in a less compact way. So let's do that first. So we're going to create a new table or create a new query. We have multiple tables that we need to use because we want to group by major school and type of experience to do some frequencies, right? So we need three fields: major school, type of experience, and then we can use survey ID, right? We can use survey ID. Because survey ID, remember, survey ID is a synonym for a student respondent's name, right? Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to do query design because we have 3 tables here, right? So we got to pull the survey table here, put the survey table here. And then we wanted the type of experience, right? So we're going to pull the experience table here. And then we're going to do link experience. Link experience connects the two, right? See that? Link experience connects the two. Okay. Now, if you're doing this in SQL, remember what I said about the relationships? You don't actually do this in SQL. This is a drawing that might be on your desk, right? You might have files. You might have several of these data models, right? These database models, and you'll have a picture of each one, right? And so, yeah, you don't do this part in Excel. What you do, in SQL. What you do in SQL instead is you do this. You write the code. You write the inner join code, right? Write the inner join code. So the inner join code is this. We want to join link experience, right? We want to join link experience to experience using experience ID in the experience table and the experience ID field in the link experience table. So this creates a new table right here, right? That creates a new table. Right there. That creates a new table. Right? It widens, you can think of it as widening the experience table, right? And then that new table that's highlighted is going to be connected to the survey table, right? And we're going to connect this table to the survey table with an inner join using survey ID from the survey table and using survey ID from the link experience table. Okay, so we're basically, this right here is the line that goes from survey ID to survey ID from the link experience table to the survey table. And this is the line that you see in our relationships database diagram that is from experience ID in the experience table to experience ID in the link experience table. So that's what you would do if you're doing this for an employer and you were coding this in SQL, right? Let's just go back to design view, right? So these are those lines, right? So survey ID is connected to survey ID in the survey table and survey ID in the link experience table, right? Then the link experience is connected to experience via experience ID in the experience table and experience ID in the link experience table, right? So those are those inner joins, right? Okay, and in this query, we want, remember what you want, the boss wanted us to do what? To find the frequencies of people where we're grouping by major school and type of experience. So we got to click on major school here, and then we got to click on type of experience over here, right? Now I'm going to click on the survey ID because this creates a new table, right? It doesn't do any summary. It doesn't do any aggregation. It just makes, if you will, a third table with three pieces of information. The synonym for the respondent's name, survey ID, the type of experience those people wanted, and the school that they're majoring in, right? So let's go ahead and just run that. So if you don't see the run button, you got to click on Query Design tab and then run, right? So I'm going to go ahead and sort smallest to largest here. And you can see that John Smith, if John Smith is survey respondent number 1, John Smith is undeclared, right? And he wanted to go on a May term trip that was related to his major, focused on experience in business and other professional organizations, experiencing particular educational sites, and finally a service learning emphasis, right? That's what that very first respondent wanted. So you can see how Access makes these tables longer, right? In the main survey table, there's only one row for survey ID 1. There's only one row for survey ID 2. But when we join these tables together, it makes them longer and it can make them wider, right? Okay, so here's one way we could summarize this data with frequencies. So let's go back to design view. I want to count, right? I want to count by major, school, and type of experience. I want to count. There is no aggregation row down here, right? So total doesn't show up here. So what you have to do is kind of come up here to the ribbon and click on the query design ribbon, click totals. And that adds a row down here called total, right? We want to group by major, school, and we want to group by type of experience. But here we want to change this to count. We want the frequencies, right? We want the number in groups, right? Based on these categories right here, right? So now if I run this, watch what happens. The data is summarized, right? So the table's shorter, right? So in the original version of Query 2 table, there were 6 rows where the major was arts and sciences, and the type of experience was business and other professional organizations. Let me show you that. Let me go back to design view. There's 6 of them, right? So this is business and arts and sciences. Okay, let's go back. Design view. Let's get rid of the totals again and rerun it. Now we'll sort A to Z. Can't really see that, can you? We'll sort A to Z here, and we'll sort A to Z here. And you'll see that how many were arts and sciences and one focused on experiencing business and other professional organizations. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when we do the count, and we're grouping by major, school, and experience, these 6 rows become 1 row, and these survey IDs, which correspond to people's names, get replaced with the number of rows, right? So these 6 rows disappear, and the numbers here disappear, and they're essentially replaced with a count of this category, arts and sciences, and one focused on experience in business and other organizations. What about this one here? Business and one focused on experience in business and other professional organizations. How many are there here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Looks like 31, right? Hopefully I counted that right. So let's go back to design view, and now we're going to smash, right, these 31 rows on top of each other, and we're going to smash these 6 rows into one, right? And we're going to replace the survey ID with the count. Let's go back to design view. And we'll click totals, and we have the group by major, school, and the group by experience ID, or type of experience. We got the count, so let's go ahead and run it. So arts and sciences, one focus on experience in business and other organizations. Those 6 rows have become 1 row, and now we have count of survey ID, right? Count of survey ID. There's 6 rows, right, with these 2 categories. There were 30. I miscounted. There were 30 with that category and that category, right? So those 30 rows were smashed into 1, and the number over here is placed with a count. So that's how that works, right? Let's sort by major, school, and then let's sort by type of experience. Okay, so sorry, let's go do this. We first sort by type of experience, then we'll sort by major, school. All right, so this is a little bit more organized. Okay, so the top category for arts and sciences, the most popular for arts and sciences, is one related to my major, right? The most popular category by business majors, their most popular category is, or type of experience, is one related to my major. And that's a pretty consistent theme here. Education is the most popular type of experience desired, one related to my major. And then the same thing with nursing. Undeclared, that's not the case because, they're undeclared. They don't know what their major is, right? So they're not sure. All right. Now, this is pretty cumbersome, right? We can turn this into a pivot table. We can turn this into a pivot table in Excel. Access, right? maybe we want these to be the row headers, right? And then we want these names to pivot into the column headers. That's why they call it a pivot table, right? These are going to be the row headers, right? And then these are going to pivot into the column headers, right? Those are going to pivot into the column headers. So in order to do this, we have to go back to the design view, and we got to get rid of the totals. We want to aggregate at this point. This is going to be the feeder table. This is going to be the feeder table for our pivot table. So let's run that again, right? So this is going to be our feeder table. Nothing's been aggregated. Everything's disaggregated, right? We got a whole bunch of data here, right? A whole bunch of data here. If I sort on survey ID, I can see it, right? Person 1, person 1, person 1, person 2, person 2, person 2, person 3, person 4, person 4, person 4. So this is disaggregated data, right? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And we're going to name it query 2. Now, what we want to do is we want to create a pivot table using query 2, right? Because remember, query 2 is a column from the survey table, a column from the link experience table, and a column from the experience table, right? That's what query 2 is. So we're going to create a pivot table using the query wizard, right? We're going to use the Crosstab query wizard. Now, query 2 here, which is our feeder table to this particular query, is not listed here, right? Because it's not a table, it's a query, right? I mean, it's a table, right? It's no different than these, except it's got a column from link experience, survey, and then it's got a column from experience, right? So it's a combination of these three, but it's still a table, right? A table of raw data. So the way we get query 2 to show up here is we click on queries, or we can click on both, right? Click on both. But it's probably easier if we use queries. And it is query 2, right? Click on query 2. When we click on query 2, what shows up? Well, major school, right? Which is from the survey table. Type of experience, which is from the experience table. And survey ID, which is from the link experience table, right? We're going to put type of experience in the column headers because these categories have lots of letters in them, right? So it's going to be it'd be really extremely wide if we made them column headers. So we're going to make them the row headers. And we're going to hit next. And then major school is going to be the column header because those names are skinnier, right? And we're going to count on survey ID, right? And hit next and then finish. Okay, so to make this more readable, I'm gonna skinny this up right here, right? I'm gonna skinny that up. And then I need to rename this. I'm gonna rename this. So I'm gonna go back to query crosstab, design view, and down here, instead of calling it total of survey ID, I'm just gonna call it total, right? So total is survey ID, right? And then run that. So that changed the name there, right? That changed the name. So let's click on that gray box right there to highlight the whole table, and then double click to size. And then I'm gonna shrink that up so we can see everything. Okay. Okay. Cool. So what you want to do is click this gray box to highlight the whole thing. Double click here to auto size it, and then right click in this little gray light box, copy it, and we're going to paste it to Word. We're going to paste it to our answer sheet. So query 2 is the next one, right? Now notice when you copy it into Word, it makes the rows taller, which is kind of cool, right? It automatically makes them taller. So it kind of auto fits it to Word, so it's kind of cool. Access and Word play together nicely. You can see that. All right, now we need to clean up the SQL code. So we can either get the SQL code here or we can get the SQL code here, right? So it's going to look kind of similar to what we just did in the first query. After transform, we hit enter and we add a bunch of spaces. And then I'm going to copy the row and the space, the number of spaces. And then count, that's an object that we're renaming. And then I'm going to go to, after select, I'm going to go up to query 2. And I'm going to paste my spacing. And then after the comma, I'm going to do the same thing right here, right? To line up the objects. Now, query 2 is the table we're pulling it from, right? Query 2 is, we created query 2 table of raw data to feed this query 2 crosstab, right? And then after group by, I'm going to paste. And then after pivot, I'm going to paste. Okay, now remember, the data is being fed from this table of raw data here, right? So we don't, and there's only one table, query 2, so we don't need the query dot. We don't need the query 2 dot. It just makes it confusing. So I'm going to delete the query 2 dot everywhere you see it. Another thing we don't need is the square brackets, right? We don't need the square brackets. So I'm getting rid of all the square brackets. It just makes it confusing to look at. Okay, now this is kind of tall. So I'm going to change it to say totals, right? I'm going to change it to totals. Okay. So we're going to transform count survey ID as totals. We're going to use type experience. Type experience is going to be on the row. It's going to be the row. The type of experience category is going to be the row titles. We're going to count. Everything's coming from the query table, query 2 table. We're going to group first by type of experience, and then we're going to group by major school, and major school end up in the column headers, right? Here we go. So type of experience, let's do this. And then we'll skinny this up until we can see it. There we go. All right. So that's how we can do a pivot table when items come from multiple imported tables, right? So let me go ahead and double click this again, and I'll copy that into Word. Oh, I already got it, right? Already got it. Type of experience. Yeah, it's already there. So what I need to do is I need to copy the SQL code, right? I need to copy the SQL code. So let's get the SQL code here. Copy that, and then we'll put it down here. Word. So there's my query 2 crosstab. I'm going to paste my code right here. I want to change this to Courier font. Oh, it's already Courier font. Good. All right. Awesome. I'm going to shrink I'm going to have all the font the same size. We'll go 10. Okay. There we go. So I got query 1, I got query 2 crosstab, and I got the code, right? The query 2 crosstab, it's a query that is fed the query 2 raw data, right? The query 2 raw data. All right. Let's do a third query. Actually, I'm going to end the video here, and then we'll pick up where we left off.